Hi, I'm Norm Kern, and I'd like to welcome you to Access MC, Access to Motorcycling. Each month, we take you to motorcycle events, both amateur and professional. This time, though, we have a very special show. This is our 12th episode. We've been on for a whole year now. And I'd like to take the time to tell you how we got started, review the past episodes, and show you previews of future shows. The story of Access to Motorcycling started about 2.5 years ago with this simple camcorder. This little machine had no zoom. It had an optical viewfinder, which is just a window that looks directly at the subject, and it didn't even have any rewind or playback capabilities. I had to copy the tape in order to even see what I had shot. We took this camcorder on a trip to Traverse City, Michigan on the motorcycle, and we shot various scenes around Traverse City. Later on, in viewing these, I was very encouraged, and so I bought a better camcorder. This one had a zoom lens, electronic viewfinder, and a much higher quality format. Being a motorcyclist, I started shooting tapes at motorcycle events. Racer friends loved them and they wanted copies. So I was embarrassed by the idea of showing unedited tapes, and I got a simple editor. After seeing how much difference that made, I bought a real editing VCR. Here's an excerpt from the Traverse City trip, which was my first editing effort. You will see this with just live sound and no music because the music that I used at that time was not cleared for television. The following summer, I took a course at Miami Valley Cable Council to find out what public access TV was all about, and I became a certified access producer. The format of this show would be very simple. It would have an opening title sequence, an introduction to explain the event, an event documentary, a wrap-up, and closing credits. Some of the basic ideas I wanted to include in the show were: number one, cover one event per show. The magazine format used by so many shows is too superficial, and you don't get to see things in enough detail. Number two, since the show is for writers and enthusiasts, no interviews or narration would be needed. Number three, the show would concentrate on action, since that's what people seem to want to see. 4, use a film-style approach. Shoot primarily with one camera and edit intensely to make a good production. 5, sound and picture quality should be as good as possible to set the show apart from other shows and increase the enjoyment of the viewer. 6, get some episodes done quickly. We would simply use existing event tapes, re-edited for the first episodes. I bought a better editor that could also generate crude titles and grab and colorize frames to be superimposed over the live action. At Miami Valley Cable Council's request, I created a promo for the first show. I'd like to show it to you. Here it is. As you can see, this is a bare-bones, all-action show. Nevertheless, it won a local Arnie Award from the Cable Council a few months later. For the second episode, I pulled out the edited version of the Greenville Enduro of November 1989. This event was only the second time I had used my good camcorder. I was like any other spectator at the event, being on my own to find places to shoot. I only had one battery. It lasted only long enough to shoot 45 minutes of raw tape. Almost all of the usable footage was used on the air. The editing is crude because, like the first episode, the event portion was done on my first, very crude editor. I wanted to include road riding in the show, so the third episode was about a poker run. My wife Carol shot much of the footage from the back of my bike. It was her first experience with a camcorder, but she did very well. The sound was mostly wind noise, so I put a musical score together. Dirt riders didn't like this show, but I got some good comments on it because it gave the viewer an idea of what it's like to go for a road ride in the country on a nice day. My original tape had much more enjoyable music, but I couldn't use it on the air. The fourth episode is a touring rally in Richmond, Kentucky. I like the parade through town. It shows why riders and townspeople alike enjoy the rally. The tour to Natural Bridge is shown in detail to emphasize the variety in the world of motorcycling. Many unsuspecting channel flippers were surprised to find the travelogue they were watching was a motorcycle show. By the time the Richmond Rally episode aired, lots of things were happening. The show was about motorcycling for motorcyclists. That didn't mean anyone was excluded, but I never thought non-riders would watch. I was dead wrong. Total strangers would stop me and talk about the show. The stories were all similar. They all began with, I was flipping channels the other night, and I saw these motorcycles. It looked interesting, so I figured I'd watch until the next commercial. And of course, we don't have any, so they watched the whole thing. I really enjoyed it, and at the end, you were on there. Almost 70% of the people who watch this show are not motorcyclists. I've even talked to some who don't like motorcycles but watch the show regularly anyway. A typical comment from a non-rider is like, I wanted to see where these people go and what they do. I love it. That is exactly why I did the show in the first place, so people can see what motorcycling is really all about. This is not something you can explain in a studio by talking. You have to go out in the real world and show where they go and what they do. This is one of the biggest factors of the show's success, and is also what makes it so much more difficult to produce. I didn't set out to produce a show for the general public, but I figured if they were nice enough to watch it anyway, that I should provide something for them in the form of narration and interviews. In the fifth episode, we covered a hare scrambles. Burt Dunlop, who rode in the race, and I narrated it. This was a first for the series, and it was very well received. By the way, this was the first event shot especially for the show. This was about the swampiest place on the course. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? There's different ways to get through there.
Well, there was probably a good 200 yards of swamp like that around that section there. It went up back around out of sight, out of camera range there. And the tricky part of it was some of that...
The sixth episode was taken from a road trip to Utah from the year before. My wife Carol shot some of the footage. This episode presented touring, which is one of the most popular motorcycle activities. This was another episode to catch the unsuspecting viewer. One of the major advantages to the small size of Bryce Canyon is that in about an hour you can hike down to the bottom. Episode 7 was coverage of the 1990 Dayton Motorcycle Club Hill Climb. Bob Moore appeared for the first time on the show. Bob has been a fellow club member for almost 30 years. When I first joined the club in 1967, Bob said he would introduce me to a whole world most people don't even know exists. As I show you this world I've enjoyed for 25 years, I'm proud to share my mentor with you. Bob is a former professional dirt track racer and has been the announcer at the Hill Climb for many years. He is one of the most knowledgeable and articulate people I know, and he is a major asset to the show. This was the first episode with on-camera interviews, and Bob did an outstanding job.
If that doesn't work, I'll change my gearing. Earl, I understand you started hill climbing in 1955. What was the year you won your first national championship?
Episode 8 took us back to Greenville for the 1990 Peace Pipe Enduro. This was the same event, although a different year, that we had covered in the second episode. But that was one of our most popular episodes, so we didn't think that it would be too redundant to do it again. This time I had a map from the club showing me where to go and when to be there. I also had extra batteries and was able to shoot 2 hours of tape. Ron Raymert, the club referee, and Len Neely came all the way from Greenville to narrate. This event always makes a great show, and Treaty City is an outstanding club to work with. We will be covering more of their events in the future. You've probably noticed by now that I don't narrate too often. That's because there's usually someone with specialized knowledge who's available who can tell you a lot more about the event than I can. That is certainly the case with the 9th episode, which covers a pro motocross race at Kenworthy's near Troy, Ohio. Ron Denny is not only a life member of Dayton Motorcycle Club, but has been a pro motocross referee since the early 1970s. He provided a lot of information about both the riders and the course.
Jeff's a consistent front runner. He's also one of the really nice people in the sport of motocross racing, and it's always good to see him doing well on any given track. Most of these guys are real nice people as far as that goes, and it's always enjoyable working with them.
Against the concrete both ways. Episode 10 was done to provide a change of pace. Since it was scheduled to air in December when most people are busy doing other things, we showed how to change a tire. My wife Carol got a good workout on the camera on this one.
Is to take the valve core out. So we unscrew the cap. The cap here doesn't really seal air or anything. It mostly keeps dirt out.
By the time we put the 11th episode together, we had a new editor. Yes, the third one. This one has a feature called Time Code and works with a new camcorder. Up until now, the entire series was shot and edited using only this one camcorder. It's not being retired, but the days of having to rely entirely on a single piece of equipment are over. The 11th episode is a pro half-mile dirt track race at Springfield, Ohio. It was shot with several borrowed cameras. This made for great coverage, but a lot of difficult editing. Fortunately, the new editor made the job easier. As usual, Bob Moore does an outstanding job on interviews and narration.
Well, I wasn't a novice till 1972.
This is your beginner's class. It's a mixture of amateurs, people that are just trying to start their careers off in motorcycle racing, and the older professionals that no longer want to compete at the level with the experts and the juniors, so they ride these 500 single machines. It's a good training ground because the youngsters coming on can compete against the old-timers' experience, and it gives them a chance to learn how to race a bike without really being in dire danger, because these guys they don't quite run as hard as what the amateurs, the juniors and the experts do, but they do a tremendous job. It's a tremendously highly competitive race.
Things don't always go according to plan. So here are a few outtakes that would never make it to a regular show. Hi, I'm Norm Kern, and I'd like to welcome you to Access MC, Access to Motorcycling. Each month we bring you take 3. Hi, I'm Norm Kern, and I'd like to welcome you to Access MC, Access to Motorcycling. Each month, we bring you the very best in motorcycle activities with people and events. Let's try 4. Let's see what's wrong with the lens. Tilt the camera up. I don't see anything on the lens.
We'll look through the
All
viewfinder.
right, fine. Well, that's in the viewfinder.
Okay.
It's
Well,
nothing to
that's
worry
all
about.
that counts.
Okay. Now that we've broken that second bead, I think the next thing we want to do is take the inner tube out.
Hey, some guy wrecked right there.
Yeah. Score it! Score it!
Well, that pretty well brings us up to date. But where do we go from here? Well, first of all, in future shows, we're going to feature a monthly event calendar so that you will know what events are happening and when and where. Also, we're putting the show on in more places so that more people can see it. This month, I'd like to thank Scott Cadwell of Cadillac, Michigan, who is submitting our show to air on public access in the Cadillac, Michigan area. Also, we are currently negotiating with several other areas to put the show on there. In addition, I'd like to show you some previews of some upcoming episodes. We're going back to Richmond, Kentucky for another rally. We'll look at the test ride programs, talk to the people behind some major trends, touch on owners groups, etc. We'll take a look at the Old Time Newsies Professional Half-Mile Dirt Track Race in Dayton, hosted by Larry Myers, and we'll learn about the MCMD, that's Motorcycling for Muscular Dystrophy, run, which was held the same weekend. This year we're also going back to Kenworthy's. This time you'll get to meet some of the top national riders, plus see much better coverage of the races.
National circuit.
Most people have never seen and observed trials. In this event, speed is not a factor. Balance and skill in riding over obstacles is the order of the day. You will be amazed. We'll be covering the Dayton Motorcycle Club's Special Wish Poker Run. This is a simple, informal event
Last year
whose
when
purpose is
the
to
Dayton
raise money
Motorcycle
for
Club
charity.
had their first annual poker run for Special Wish Foundation. All of us can agree on one thing. We all
The problem with trail riding is there's no place to do it. That's what people like to say, but it's not true. Our special trail riding episode looks at some trail riding opportunities and shows why trail riding is fun. An amateur motocross at Dayton Motorcycle Club takes us all the way back to our roots. This was the same place and the same kind of event that was covered in our very first episode. Be sure to watch this one and see how much our show has changed. Baby Burr is an organized national trail ride. You'll get to meet Dave Groman and Bill Kepner of the Enduro Riders Association. They give some inside information on how these events are laid out, plus you'll see the action on some beautiful trails in south central Ohio. By popular demand, we're going back to the Dayton Motorcycle Club hill climb at Oregonia, Ohio. Both interviews in action are even better than last year's show. Finally, we'll go back to Greenville for another Treaty City Peace Pipe Enduro. This year's event features some two-camera coverage as well as an interview with National Enduro Champion Jeff Russell.
To go across because that's where you're hitting on something.
To sum up, I'd like to thank you, our loyal viewers, for your support and feedback that's helped us do a better show. One of the basic goals of the show is to be seen and be enjoyed. The response from viewers has made our efforts worthwhile. I'd also like to thank the people who have helped out both on and off camera. Scott Cadwell, Ron Denny, Dennis Dieter, Bert Dunlop, Ron Evans, Wayne Gray, Bob Haynes, John Hinders, Greg Jump, Carol Kern, Bob Moore, Len Neely, Ron Raymert, Kirk Sessions, Dave Spencer, and Carl Sukamel. That's all we have time for this month. Remember, there will be a new show again next month. So in the meantime, I'd like to invite you to join the over 7 million riders who enjoy the world of motorcycling. See you next time.